Check Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Chamber Chats, coming to you as always from here in the podcasting studios at the Czech Media Group, one of our chamber champions. I live and work in the unceded ancestral land of the Lekwungen-speaking nations, Songhees and Kosapsum, and it's been our honor and pleasure to work alongside them. And all of this is happening because of the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, who are changing what banking can do for people, for community, and for the planet. How often are you watching something on TV or on a on-demand channel or something, and you're looking and go, is that Victoria? Is that Souk? Is that Sydney? Chances are it is, because a lot of that happens, as you know, that things are shot here. And the reason that happens is that the Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission make that happen. And the film commissioner is Tara-Lee Novak, and she joins me now. Hi.
Hi, Bruce. Good to see you.
So when we ask people this question all the time, when you meet someone for the first time and they ask you what's the organization, what do you tell them?
I know I still don't quite have my pitch down because the role has a lot of different facets to it. But essentially, my team and I promote the locations and the skills that are inherent here to the South Island. So we want to draw the global film market to our region.
Which, of course, everybody thinks is pretty cool. It's very glamorous, and it's hard work. I mean, it's a grind for sure. But the glamour of it is one thing, but the economic impact is tremendous. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I did not fully appreciate until I took over this role. Kathleen was in this role for 14 years. She did an amazing job. She grew the region from an average annual spend of $6 million to $60 million. So that's where we're sitting at about right now. Last year, the Motion Picture Association put out some stats saying that $90 million were spent in the South Island sector.
Well, let's break that up a little bit and unpack it, if you will. What's that being spent on?
That's a good question. So that does include local crew wages as well as locations. So if your private home or perhaps you're a municipality with a beautiful asset and you're renting it out, a lot of the money that I just mentioned there does go towards the rental of a location. But additionally, crew and cast, people need places to stay. So that's hotels, restaurants, construction, retail, gas. It really is a vehicle for money to be spent in a lot of different industries.
I mean, there's a lot of catering when you walk through movie sites, wherever it might be. There's food trucks everywhere. That's another piece of it, right?
Absolutely. There is a project that will go to film very soon. There'll be 200 film crew on that
Wow.
set. Yeah.
Okay, so explain that process to me. When someone comes to the film commission, they say, "Hi, we have this film or this feature, this
Yeah.
documentary we want to shoot." What are the steps in that you and your group undertake?
So typically a producer comes to us and they either share a script or a breakdown of what they're looking for. We put together a lookbook. So we currently have about 2,500 registered locations here in the South Island. And in 24 hours, we turn our services around, we give them a link, and in the link is a variety of looks, usually up to like 100 different looks for their script. And then we try to tell the story. So if you have a historical piece, then we can talk about how film friendly our local castles are.
Now, the people that would like to be in those films, how often does somebody contact your office and say, "I'm an actor. I want to be in a film. Can you help me?" Does that ever happen?
Absolutely. We had that call this morning. We
Oh,
get those calls and we typically triage them to casting agents that we are aware of, or maybe they're very early in their career and we point them to a school that can help them train.
yeah. And what about that sourcing of venues? If somebody has kind of a funky piece of land or a cool house or an interesting business, how can they then connect to be a location?
Absolutely. You can give our office a call or go to our website and check out the section that says local industry. And there is a drop down menu. You register your home. We are so happy to answer questions. Of course, people are curious what that process would involve. Private residences remain private in our database. Only the producer that receives the link can see it. It is not public facing. But I love talking about our database and the opportunity that exists for the region, because as you can imagine, businesses can leverage this opportunity as part of their revenue strategy. So in January or February, there was a panel at Economy Rising, and I had Craig Derrick Castle on the panel, and they talked about how they don't write grants. They charge to visit the beautiful museum, and they include film as part of their strategy. So there's an opportunity for post-secondary if they're seeing maybe a bit of dip in international students. Well, you could rent out your locations because post-secondaries have so many different looks within campus.
Yeah, they sure do. What's going on right now? Who's in production now in this region?
Yeah, we actually are having a very encouraging spring. So, early in the new year, the premier announced an increase to tax credits, and that certainly resulted in more phone calls to our office. We were so delighted with that. So, right now we have a major feature that's about to go to camera. I cannot tell you the name, but
Hmm.
it's a production company owned by an A-list celebrity. We actually have two of those right now in the region. We also have a Canadian program. It's called Private Eyes West Coast. It features Jason Priestley. So for 5 seasons, it's shot in Toronto. And now Jason Priestley's character moves to Victoria. And I cannot express to you enough how rare that is. It almost never happens that Victoria gets to play as Victoria, and it's happening right now. So we're very happy about that. Local crew are employed. Um, what happens in the Toronto version of the show, and I don't know if it's going to be exactly the same for the West Coast version, but what I love about the Toronto version is that each episode focuses on a specific neighborhood, and the archetypes kind of reflect the neighborhood. So it's a really cool placemaking opportunity.
Yeah, what's most frequent here? I mean, Craigdarroch Castle comes to mind certainly, and Hatley Castle and places like that. What are the other kind of hot spots for filming?
Yeah, one of our biggest selling features certainly is the heritage architecture, but I would say it's that in addition to the proximity of all the different locations. So you could, in theory, shoot for 12 hours and you could be at a castle for half the day and then in the rainforest for the other half. That's so rare. That doesn't happen in a lot of different places around the world. So we hear time and time again from producers that they save money here just from travel. Like we know how lucky we are to get to the beach and forest and the city in a short amount of time, like 15 minutes, but the rest of the world is just sort of waking up to that.
Yeah. So our region itself is actually kind of an actor because it represents other parts of the world where people are saying, "Well, yes, we're in wherever," but yeah, we portray other parts of the world. I want to talk about that next. Our guest on Chamber Chats today is Tara Lee Novak, who is the film commissioner for South Vancouver Island. So we have been portrayed as a lot of different places. One production I recall said that we were in Boston, but what kind of other places are we made to be?
Well, Netflix made, of course, was Pacific West Coast America. We had a feature film filming here a couple months ago that actually used our heritage architecture to portray New Orleans. I hadn't seen that before.
Hmm, interesting stuff. So, the props and the set dressing and all of those people. I walked past a shoot in Bastion Square a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
How much of that is sourced locally, and how much of it comes in from Vancouver? Like there was an antique car there, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing. You can register your antique cars on the database. We have a few of those. So we do have vendors who specialize in props, especially antiques here on the island. And it's hard for me to say exactly how much of it is local or coming from, say, the mainland or elsewhere, but I want to say the vast majority is local.
Okay. Hallmark shoots here a lot, right?
Yes.
Yeah. When I did one of these with Kathleen a while ago, I said, "Is that the one where the woman with a child becomes a single mom because she divorces her husband and moves back home and meets her old boyfriend who drives a pickup truck and they get back together again?" Is it one of those?
It's entertainment, Bruce.
I know. They're very sweet stories, though. Um,
No, absolutely. We call those MOWs. Movie of the week is definitely a big part of our sector here, specifically for our region. And they kind of shoot 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. So it is a really great way, typically, for local crew to stay employed and to pay their rent and their mortgages. So we're grateful for that.
you mentioned accommodation a little while ago. We get big names here. Nick Nolte's been here, and Peter Dinklage, and Shirley MacLaine, and all those kinds of people. Where do they stay? Do they just stay in hotels like we mere humans, or do they have other arrangements made for them?
Classified information, but I
Okay.
can tell you it's a mix. As you know, we have like world-class hotels. So sometimes they stay there in the penthouses, and sometimes they do stay at private homes. That's another service that our database allows for. So if you have an executive home, maybe you're interested in renting it out to be on camera, or maybe you just want it to be rented out as a place for people to stay. And sometimes people with a large entourage, maybe a family, a couple dogs, maybe they're interested more in a house.
Yeah. So when all that stuff's going on, the shooting in whatever municipality or region it might be, there's likely some sort of permit process that has to be undertaken. Tell me about that.
Yeah. And that's where we help is to help people navigate. We have 14 different municipalities. All of them are slightly different, though I will say that we do have sort of quarterly check-ins with the different municipalities. So each municipality has a film liaison, and that film liaison is the person who helps triage the permits. Again, every municipality has a different way of approaching it. Some like to charge fees because that's how you generate income for taxpayers, right?
Hmm.
Oak Bay, I believe, they take all the film permits and the parking permits, because that's also a piece of the puzzle. They put all that into their arts program. So it's a way for them to let their constituents know that filming helps generate initiatives that they otherwise would not be able to fund.
Yeah.
So every municipality does it different. Some municipalities don't want to charge anything because they want to be film friendly.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, with 13 municipalities, you got to know it's not going to be uniform across the board. That's for sure.
No, and so we're just trying to keep everyone engaged so that we are sharing information. We don't want our film permits to be too expensive that it becomes a bit of a barrier for people to come here. Just by very nature of being an island, it's a little more expensive to get here, right? And
Hmm.
that's where the distance and regional tax credits come into play. People are drawn to the locations, the castles, the water, and then the tax credits help them offset the cost of getting here. We are still sort of an emerging market where gear is concerned. We have gear, we don't have as much gear as Vancouver. So producers know that they're going to be bringing trucks over, and that's just a cost.
Yeah. But there's incentives, like you say, that the tax credits and the incentives are something that make a difference. That keeps them coming back, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things I am so proud of about our little region here is that we do have diversity. We talked about MOWs and feature films and Canadian films. Like, we have a variety of projects, and we also have a number of properties that are willing to engage producers in a sliding scale. So if you're an indie filmmaker, an Indigenous filmmaker, you're not going to pay the same film permit that you would for a major film, feature film.
Yeah. We are recording this just for reference on May 7th, which is just slightly after President Trump made the announcement about the tariffs. And I still don't understand what that is. But before we get into that, what's the percentage of stuff that's shot here that's American sourced and that's Canadian sourced?
So the American stakeholders are definitely a big player across BC.
So again, this is just a couple of days old. How do you tariff a film or a product? I can't get my head around that.
Yeah, so it's important to acknowledge no policy has been enacted.
Hmm.
On Sunday, the president shared a proposal on Truth Social, and we've kind of been in a swirl ever since. Some folks have flagged that the existing tariffs do not include services. Film seems to be in the wheelhouse of services. I have seen, so if you go to deadline.com, that is the trade magazine. They shared allegedly John Voight's proposal that was shared with President Trump. He was actually advocating for like a 10% national tax incentive. He was advocating that perhaps they may want to consider imposing a 100 or a 120% tariff on projects that are produced outside of the U.S. That are financed outside the U.S. So maybe if you access BC tax credits, you're taxed on that. But it is, this is such a deeply intertwined sector. Projects are filmed in a variety of locations for one film. It would be very, very difficult to police that.
Yeah. Again, it appears to be an uninformed decision, but it's not over yet, and we'll keep an eye on it. Like I say, we're only recording this May 7th, so that could have all fallen off the cliff by now. Who knows? So one of the other great things about Victoria, in addition to being a beautiful place, is that we have an amazing climate. I want to talk about that and how it relates to production next. Our guest today on Chamber Chats is the South Island Film Commissioner, Tara Lee Novak. Is there a time of year where shooting happens more often than others?
So a lot of projects get greenlit in the new year. And so we start to get a lot of calls in the new year, and they're usually here by spring filming. So spring and summer are busy. I don't have to tell you, that sort of dovetails with our tourism sector. So a lot of time, the different hospitality stakeholders ask us to please encourage people to film in the shoulder season, but it all kind of lines up with funding.
Yeah. Have any of the, you mentioned Jason Priestley's doing something about moving to Victoria in his show. He used to own a property in Tofino, or actually in Ucluelet. I know that for a fact. Have you ever heard about somebody who's a star that says, I'm going to live in this place. I kind of like going to buy a place to stay. Does that ever happen?
We hear all the time that people are here for work and they can't believe that this place exists. Like
Hmm.
someone just last week was telling me that they were walking to set and they passed a peacock and they thought, where am I? Is this Disney World?
Yeah. Beacon Hill Park, I'm going to bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about the funding of your organization because that's such a crucial part of what keeps you going and enables you to do your work. And you had talked about how Kathleen has, in her time, ramped up all of the money that's behind the organization. But you have sponsors. Tell me about the sponsors and what those opportunities are.
And I do want to clarify, like Kathleen, what she did was draw attention to the region. So
Mhm.
when I said she grew it from 6 million to 60 million, I'm referring to the spending in the region. So
Okay.
that's the money that is spent after the producers come. Our funding is probably the biggest pain point for me as a new person. We have a very modest budget for what we do. We are very, very grateful to the province for providing funding. We are grateful to the municipalities that provide funding. We're looking at, on average, across the different municipalities, about 20, 25 cents per person in the GVRD. That's kind of what it shakes out to be. And our capacity is sort of informed by the amount of human beings that I can hire. So there's myself and there's one other full-time person, and then two part-time people who we leverage their amazing
Yeah.
skills and all their years of experience.
So you're kind of touching on governance there and how the operation operates, if you will. You have a board of directors that runs what you do. The Film Commission actually began as a committee of this chamber, of the Greater Victoria Chamber. So because of that past heritage, we appoint someone to your board to serve there. It's a woman named Brenda McFarlane right now. How does the board work? What's their sort of role within the operations? Not operations really, but they play a crucial role. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's a nonprofit society. We have 12 board members who are elected at our AGM. You mentioned your lovely appointee from the Chamber of Commerce. She came on board in January. I'm very grateful to have her. And so we have our monthly board meetings and we check in about the state of the region. And we've been busy since I've started. And so we're constantly readjusting, and a big part of the future will involve stakeholder engagement. We've been doing mixers where people can come and just have more face time, because a part of that just fell away a little bit with COVID,
Yeah.
as it did in many sectors.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So when you talk about the heritage of shooting here, it's not just movies, right? There's other stuff that's shot here. What other things are shot here?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a keen interest in our region for documentaries. The organic, authentic stories that exist here are amazing. There's also emerging markets. Do you know what a vertical program is?
I'm going to say it's one that moves up and down.
Exactly. So everyone in different parts of the world are on their phones. And
Yeah.
so there's a big emerging market for vertical content. And maybe you get hooked into it for free. And then halfway through the show, there is a paywall. We're starting to see that. So when I hear about tariffs, yes, that's concerning. And there's a world of possibility out there.
Yeah. If somebody doesn't really want to be a career film or production person, but they would still like to be involved, how can they volunteer?
Absolutely. We have a volunteer webpage on our website, filmvictoria.com. I mentioned mixers. We're doing a lot more events. And so just having folks who are great with people be present is wonderful. Spreading the word. We do a lot of letter campaigns where we go out for walks in beautiful neighborhoods and leave letters and invite people to register. That doesn't get done unless there's human beings willing to do that. So
Yeah.
that is definitely a great way. If you have time, if you like going for walks anyways, that's an easy lift and we benefit greatly.
Cool. So when you talk about the heritage of shooting here, or if you brag, if you will, what are the really high point productions that have happened here that are best known, certainly through North America, if not around the world?
Netflix Made was a very, very big deal. The locations were characters within each episode. So if you watched it, you really had a sense of place. and that did wonders for the region. It was a relatively big budget, so some folks certainly were able to invest that revenue.
Yeah. Grace Point is another one,
Absolutely, that's another one.
which is a Canadian version of a British show originally called Broadchurch. Is that the one, I think? With David Tennant, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, and that was a split between Oak Bay and Sydney. So we're talking about all these things that are going on, and your website, which you've mentioned, is filmvictoria.com. We would encourage people to go look at that website, right, to find out what's going on.
I would also preface that by saying it's a 10-year-old website, and our nonprofit doesn't currently have the ability to have a new website. And a website is such an important marketing tool. So I'm a little self-conscious, but it is what it is. And I hope that over time, as we build relationships in the community, there might be someone who wants to help us with that.
Well, they might actually be watching this right now. And if they are, they can contact you through the website.
That's right.
Right.
I'd be very grateful.
Yeah, Tara Lee, thank you for being with us today. You've been kind enough to send us some images of stuff that's going on in this region. We're going to close out by taking a look at a few of those. And again, if you want to find out more about it, filmvictoria.com is the website, and Tara Lee Novak is the South Island, Greater Victoria, no, South Island, South Vancouver Island Film Commissioner. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Bruce.
You bet. I'm Bruce Williams, and we'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.